A millionaire went undercover for a simple dinner, but a single note from a waitress changed the way he saw the world forever. David Marshall had always lived in a world most people could only dream of. Towering office buildings, sleek luxury cars, and lavish parties were all part of his daily life. From the outside, it seemed like he had everything anyone could want: money, respect, and influence. But over time, David began to realize that wealth and status, while impressive, did not bring him the connection he truly craved. Life had become predictable and mechanical, full of polite smiles, shallow conversations, and people who often treated him not as a person, but as a symbol of success. He started feeling a longing for something different. Something real, and opportunity to step out of the bubble of luxury and experience life as ordinary people did. One chilly evening, David decided he wanted to do something unusual. He wanted to see the world from the perspective of someone who had to work hard every day, someone who had to live without the protections and comforts of wealth. But he didn't want to just observe from a distance. He wanted to immerse himself completely. He wanted anonymity, freedom from recognition, and the chance to interact with people naturally. The idea excited him because it was so different from his normal life. He wanted to see if ordinary moments, like a simple dinner at a local diner, could feel meaningful, and perhaps even reveal something about himself that he had long forgotten. He chose his clothes carefully. The outfit had to be simple and ordinary enough to not attract attention. He picked a plain gray hoodie, an old pair of jeans, and a cap to hide his face. His expensive watch and designer shoes were swapped for something practical and inconspicuous. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself, but that was exactly what he wanted: to be invisible. To experience the world as someone unknown. He felt a thrill of freedom, knowing that tonight nobody would treat him differently because of his name or wealth. David drove through quiet streets until he found a small diner tucked in the corner of a suburban neighborhood. The sign was slightly faded, and the neon light flickered softly, giving the place a warm, welcoming glow. It wasn't fancy at all, just a typical diner where locals came to eat, chat, and spend a few hours away from their busy lives. He parked a few blocks away, not wanting to attract attention, and walked in, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was completely different from the polished restaurants he usually frequented, where people recognized him and often tried to impress him. The diner smelled of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and the faint sweetness of pancakes being cooked in the kitchen. The chatter of regular customers filled the air, a mix of laughter, casual conversations, and the occasional clatter of dishes. It was lively, but not overwhelming, and it instantly felt comforting. David noticed the waitress, a young woman who moved quickly yet gracefully between tables, taking orders, serving food, and checking on customers with a warm smile. She seemed genuinely happy in her work, not performing for anyone, just doing her job with care and attention. There was something admirable about that, something he hadn't seen in his own world of employees, who often acted out of obligation rather than genuine interest. He chose a quiet corner table, far enough from the main crowd to observe without being intrusive. From his seat, he could see the interactions of other diners' friends laughing together. A father helping his child with a plate of food, a couple quietly sharing a dessert. The simple scenes of everyday life were fascinating to him. He realized that in all his years of wealth and business meetings, he had rarely taken the time to truly notice people, to see the little gestures that made life rich and meaningful. Here, in this small diner, life was uncomplicated, honest, and surprisingly beautiful in its simplicity. David watched Emily, the waitress, as she went from table to table. She remembered the names of customers, asked about their day, and seemed genuinely interested in their well-being. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just kindness and attentiveness. He admired the way she handled a small problem at one of the tables with patience, calmly resolving a spilled drink while keeping the customer at ease. For David, who was used to people fawning over his status or trying to gain favor, this was refreshingly real. Here, people weren't treating him differently because of who he was. They were interacting as equals. It made him feel something he hadn't felt in years: genuine curiosity and warmth. Sitting there, David allowed himself to relax in a way he hadn't in a long time. He wasn't thinking about stock markets, business deals, or the pressures of maintaining his empire. Instead, he felt a connection to the small, ordinary moments happening around him, the clinking of utensils, the smiles shared between strangers, the subtle nods of gratitude exchanged for good service. He realized how much he had been missing out on by living in a world where money and status defined interactions. In this simple diner, the complexity of wealth faded away, leaving only the human experience, raw and unfiltered. As he settled into the rhythm of the diner, he felt a sense of freedom he hadn't known existed. No one here would recognize him. No one here cared about his past or future achievements. For the first time in a long while, he could just be David, a man among others, enjoying an ordinary evening without the weight of expectation. He felt a strange joy in observing life from this angle, and a quiet excitement about what might happen next. Who knew? Perhaps this simple dinner could teach him more about life, kindness, and connection than any boardroom meeting ever could. And so, David waited patiently, curious about the night ahead, about the people he would meet, and about the small, human stories that unfolded in this unassuming diner. For him, this evening wasn't just a meal. It was an adventure, a chance to rediscover what truly mattered. David carefully studied the menu, noticing how simple it was compared to the extravagant choices he was used to in upscale restaurants. There were burgers, sandwiches, salads, and a few classic dinners, like grilled chicken and mashed potatoes. Nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress, just honest, straightforward food that people actually enjoyed. He smiled to himself, realizing how refreshing it felt to be in a place that didn't try to overwhelm him with luxury. He decided on a modest meal: grilled chicken, a side salad, and iced tea. It wasn't because he was trying to save money, but because he wanted to fully experience the diner the way a normal customer would, without drawing any attention. When Emily, the waitress, approached, David noticed the easy way she greeted him. "Evening. What can I get for you tonight?" she asked, smiling warmly, her tone friendly and relaxed. There was no trace of formality, no hesitation, no assumption about who he was. David replied politely, placing his order, and then watched as she moved on to attend to other tables. He was struck by her energy. She moved with a purpose, yet she didn't rush. She had a rhythm that made everything seem effortless. He admired how she balanced efficiency with kindness, a combination he rarely encountered in his usual life. As he waited for his food, David allowed himself to observe the diner more closely. The place was bustling with locals, each engaged in their own stories and interactions. A group of elderly men sat in one corner, discussing the day's news and laughing at shared memories. A young couple sat near the window, talking quietly, hands occasionally brushing over the table. A family with small children was at another table, managing spills and giggles with patience and love. David noticed the small gestures: a hand on a shoulder, a shared smile, a comforting pat. In his world, people often forgot these simple human connections because everything revolved around success and status. Here it felt natural, effortless, and deeply human. He watched Emily handle a small situation at another table. A little boy had accidentally knocked over his glass of milk, and the boy looked terrified at the thought of getting in trouble. Emily quickly wiped the spill, reassured the child with a gentle smile, and quietly brought a replacement drink without making a fuss. The parents looked relieved, and the boy's face lit up with gratitude. David was amazed at the grace and patience she displayed. In his usual life, such moments were rare. People were often too busy, too distracted, or too self-absorbed to notice or care. Seeing her genuine care for her customers made him realize how important small acts of kindness were and how often they went unnoticed. When his food finally arrived, David took a moment to appreciate it. The grilled chicken was simple, seasoned just right, and the salad was fresh with crisp vegetables. He tasted the iced tea, pleasantly sweetened, and felt a kind of satisfaction that money and luxury rarely gave him. Eating in this quiet, ordinary way, he felt grounded. It was more than just nourishment for his body, it was nourishment for his mind and spirit. He noticed the comforting hum of conversation around him, the occasional clink of dishes, the soft laughter echoing through the diner. It was a symphony of ordinary life, and for the first time in a long while, David felt completely at peace. Throughout the meal, he couldn't help but watch Emily as she worked. She moved from table to table with unwavering focus, yet she never appeared rushed or stressed. She remembered orders without writing them down, smiled genuinely at each customer, and handled any requests with patience. David realized that her work required a unique combination of skill, empathy, and attention to detail. It was not easy, yet she made it look effortless. He thought about how in his world people often underestimated or dismissed the effort behind everyday jobs, seeing only the visible outcomes rather than the dedication required. Watching her reminded him that real talent and dedication existed everywhere, not just in boardrooms or luxury offices as he ate. David noticed small moments of connection among the other diners. A man offered his fries to his friend with a playful grin. A woman helped a child struggling with a spoon. Strangers laughed together over a shared joke. These interactions were simple, yet they carried a warmth that David had rarely experienced in his own world, where people were more focused on networking or competing than on enjoying the present moment. He realized that in these small acts there was a kind of richness that no amount of money could buy. It was authentic, human, and deeply meaningful. Midway through his meal, Emily returned to check on him. "Everything okay so far?" she asked, her smile genuine, her tone casual. David nodded, genuinely pleased. He complimented the food and she responded with modest gratitude, as if it was her job and she was simply doing it well. There was no need for flattery or recognition. Her satisfaction came from doing her work properly and seeing her customers enjoy it. David found this humbling. In his usual world, people sought recognition for every achievement, often forgetting that true satisfaction could come simply from doing something well and helping others along the way. As he finished his meal, David felt a strange sense of contentment. It wasn't about the food itself, it was about the experience, the ordinary human interactions, and the feeling of being part of a world that existed outside his own wealth and status. He realized that he had spent so many years chasing material success that he had neglected the small, meaningful moments that truly made life fulfilling. Sitting in that diner, surrounded by ordinary people, living ordinary lives, he felt a kind of connection and clarity he had long forgotten. The simplicity, the authenticity, and the warmth of the environment stirred something deep within him he paid attention to. Emily one last time as she moved between tables. She laughed with a customer who made a small joke, helped another with a complicated order, and managed to keep her composure despite the constant busyness of the diner. David marveled at her resilience and her ability to bring joy into a hectic environment. He understood in that moment that success was not only measured by money or power, but by the impact one could have on the people around them, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Every act of kindness, every smile, and every bit of patience mattered more than he had ever realized by the time he finished his iced tea. David felt a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and reflection. The experience was teaching him lessons he hadn't expected to learn outside the walls of his luxurious life. He saw the value of human connection, of empathy, and of observing life with genuine curiosity. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his empire, his reputation, or his responsibilities. Instead, he was simply present, absorbing the ordinary moments that often go unnoticed but hold so much beauty and meaning as he prepared to leave the table. He knew that this evening, simple as it seemed, would stay with him. The meal, the atmosphere, Emily's quiet dedication had reminded him of something important, that real richness comes not from money, but from noticing, appreciating, and participating in the lives of others. It was a lesson he would carry with him long after he returned to his high-powered world. A lesson he had learned not in a meeting, but in the humble surroundings of a small diner. As David sat back, finishing the last bites of his meal, he felt a calm settle over him that was unusual for someone whose life was usually defined by schedules, meetings, and constant decisions. The diner, with its soft chatter and clinking dishes, felt alive yet peaceful. He observed Emily as she continued moving from table to table, her smile never fading, her attention always genuine. There was something comforting in her presence. Even in a busy environment, she seemed to make every customer feel seen and valued. David couldn't remember the last time someone's simple actions had made him feel so recognized. Even though she didn't know who he was, that realization struck him deeply. As he prepared to ask for the check, Emily approached his table with her usual warmth. "Did you enjoy your meal?" she asked, her eyes meeting his in a way that conveyed sincere curiosity rather than routine politeness. David nodded, feeling a smile spread across his face. "It was excellent, thank you," he said. Her smile widened, and she seemed genuinely pleased by his response. In that moment, David realized that for her, satisfaction didn't come from praise, but from doing her job well and making a positive difference in someone's day. He was fascinated by this kind of fulfillment, so simple, so pure, yet so absent in the world he was used to. Emily handed him the check. David noticed she had written something in the corner of the receipt. At first, he assumed it was a note about the meal or a standard thank you message. But as he looked closer, he realized it was something different. Written neatly in pen, the note read, "Thank you for your kindness and the smile you brought to my day. It's rare to see someone appreciate the little things." David froze for a moment, staring at the words. His heart skipped a beat. Here was a simple note, handwritten by someone who didn't know him, acknowledging something so ordinary, yet so profound. It wasn't about money, status, or gifts. It was about recognition, empathy, and genuine human connection. The note made him pause and reflect. How often had he been so caught up in his own world that he overlooked the small kindnesses around him? How often had people tried to impress him with words or gestures only to leave him feeling empty? And yet here in a quiet diner, a total stranger had captured his attention and touched his heart with just a few lines of sincere, thoughtful words. It was humbling. David felt a mix of emotions, surprise, gratitude, and a sudden sense of vulnerability. He realized that wealth and power could not create this feeling only simple. Honest human interaction could daunt. As he read the note again, he felt a wave of warmth wash over him. Emily's words, though brief, conveyed recognition and appreciation in a way that money or status never could. She had seen him not as a millionaire, not as a public figure, but as a person. That realization made him reflect on the many years he had spent chasing achievements and accolades while often ignoring the importance of small gestures. A smile, a thank you, or a simple note like this could mean far more than grand displays of wealth. It was a lesson that touched him more than he expected, and he found himself quietly moved by the sincerity behind her writing. David's thoughts drifted to the countless moments in his life where he had overlooked people's efforts or kindnesses, too focused on results and recognition. How many times had he brushed off a waiter, a driver, or an assistant, not noticing the small things they did to make his life smoother or more pleasant? Here, in this unassuming diner, he realized that these small acts were powerful, often unnoticed, but capable of creating profound connections. Emily, without knowing it, had reminded him of the humanity he had been missing in his own life. He looked up at her as she moved on to another table, her cheerful demeanor unchanged. Even in a crowded, busy environment, she had taken the time to write a personal note for a single customer, someone who was just another face in her evening. That intentional act of thoughtfulness struck him deeply. He felt a sense of awe at her ability to see and acknowledge someone else's effort in such a genuine way. In his own world, he thought, people rarely took the time to do this. They were too preoccupied with their own ambitions and challenges. Emily's words reminded him that the simplest gestures could carry extraordinary meaning. David considered the irony of the situation. Here he was, a man of immense wealth and influence, sitting in a diner among ordinary people, moved to his core by a short note from a waitress who had no idea who he really was. It was a humbling experience, and one that made him feel more connected to the world around him than he had in years. He realized that moments like this, soon, scripted, genuine, and human, were rare in his life. But they held a power far greater than any business deal or luxury purchase. The note had reminded him that recognition and appreciation, even in their simplest forms, could create meaningful emotional experiences. He sat quietly for a few minutes, rereading the note, letting the words sink in. There was a purity to them, a lack of expectation or judgment, and that was what made them so impactful. It wasn't flattery, it was sincerity. And sincerity, David thought, was rare and precious. He felt an urge to express gratitude, but he knew words would not capture the depth of his feeling. Instead, he made a mental note to carry the lesson with him, to value small acts of kindness, to recognize others' efforts, and to appreciate genuine human connections more than material wealth. As he got up to leave, David reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without a word, he left a generous tip, far beyond the cost of the meal. He wanted to reward not just the service, but the thoughtfulness, the care, and the effort Emily had shown. As he walked toward the exit, he noticed her glance in his direction, and a small, appreciative smile crossed her face. He didn't need to explain himself, and she didn't need to know who he was. The gesture spoke for itself. It felt like the perfect way to honor the small yet powerful connection they had shared that evening. Stepping outside, David breathed in the cool night air. He felt lighter than he had in a long time, as if a weight he didn't know he carried had been lifted. The note, the moment of genuine recognition and Emily's quiet kindness had touched him deeply. It reminded him that even in a life filled with luxury and power, true fulfillment came from simple human experiences. Money could provide comfort and convenience, but it could never replicate the warmth of being seen, appreciated, and connected with another person. He felt grateful, not for the meal or the service, but for the reminder of what truly mattered. Walking back to his car, he reflected on how often he had rushed past these moments in the past, too busy to notice the beauty in ordinary life. He realized that such moments were rare, and when they occurred, they carried profound significance. Emily's note had not only brightened her evening, but had unexpectedly brightened his own. He thought about how he could carry this experience into his life, how he could value small gestures, notice others' efforts, and embrace authenticity in his interactions. For David, this was more than a simple dinner. It was a revelation about human connection, empathy, and the power of kindness. As he drove away, the diner's soft neon glow fading in his rearview mirror, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. The note had left him speechless, but in that silence, he had discovered something far more important than money or recognition: the beauty and impact of genuine human kindness. It was a lesson he knew he would remember for a long time, one that would shape the way he viewed the world and the way he interacted with the people in it. That simple, heartfelt message had made an ordinary night extraordinary, and David knew that the memory would stay with him forever. David stood from his table slowly, holding the receipt with Emily's note in his hand. He felt a strange mix of emotions: humility, warmth, and a quiet kind of joy that he had not experienced in years. The note had affected him more deeply than he could have imagined. It wasn't just words on paper. It was recognition, connection, and a reminder of the human side of life that he often overlooked. For someone like David, who was used to people noticing him for his wealth, achievements, or reputation, this simple, heartfelt message from a stranger had shaken something deep within him. He realized that true value wasn't always measured in money or power, but in small, sincere gestures that touched the heart. He looked around the diner one last time before leaving. Emily was still busy, moving efficiently between tables, chatting with customers, and making sure everyone was comfortable. There was a natural grace in the way she worked, an effortless kindness that seemed to flow from her personality. David admired her more than ever. He thought about how rare it was to meet someone so genuine in his own world, where interactions were often transactional and based on self-interest. Here, every smile, every careful action, and every kind word seemed to come from the heart. He realized that he wanted to honor that authenticity in some way, to acknowledge the value of her effort, even if she would never know who he truly was. Reaching into his pocket, David pulled out his wallet and carefully left a generous tip on the table. It was far beyond what the meal had cost, but it wasn't about money. It was about gratitude, respect, and acknowledgement for the thoughtfulness Emily had shown. He wanted her to know, even silently, that her effort and her kindness mattered. As he left the tip, he felt a sense of satisfaction, not pride or superiority, but pure contentment. This simple act was his way of participating in the same human connection that she had shown him. It felt reciprocal, natural, and profoundly rewarding. In that moment, he understood that giving, even in small ways, could carry as much meaning as receiving. David glanced back as he stood to leave, catching Emily's eye. She gave him a polite nod, a smile of acknowledgement, and went about her work. He didn't explain himself, didn't reveal his identity, because the moment didn't require it. The power of the gesture was in its simplicity, in the silent communication of appreciation and respect. It reminded him that real human connection didn't need recognition or fame to exist. It thrived on sincerity and awareness. Walking toward the door, David felt a renewed sense of humility. He understood that life's richness wasn't measured in possessions, but in moments like this, moments of genuine human interaction, empathy, and thoughtfulness. As he stepped outside into the cool night air, David took a deep breath and felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The diner, the note. And the encounter had opened a window into a world he rarely experienced, a world where people connected honestly and simply, without the influence of wealth or status. He felt lighter, calmer, and unexpectedly happy. The realization struck him that he had been carrying unnecessary burdens for years: expectations, competition, and the constant pursuit of more. For the first time in a long while, he felt free, if only for a few hours, from the pressures and complexities of his life. The experience had reminded him of the importance of slowing down and noticing the ordinary beauty in life. Walking back to his car, he reflected on the events of the evening. The simple meal, the attentive service, especially the note, had reminded him that even small gestures could have a powerful impact. A few words written sincerely had moved him deeply, more than any grand gift or formal acknowledgement ever could. He thought about his own interactions over the years, realizing that he often took people for granted or overlooked the subtle ways they contributed to his life. Emily's actions had given him perspective, a lesson in gratitude, mindfulness, and human empathy. He vowed to carry this lesson with him, to apply it in his daily life, and to recognize the people around him more intentionally as he sat in his car. Preparing to drive home, David thought about how rare and precious such genuine moments were. The evening had been unremarkable on the surface, a simple diner visit, but the emotional depth of the experience was extraordinary. He realized that the world was full of people like Emily, quietly giving their best, showing care, and making a difference without fanfare. These ordinary acts, often unnoticed, held incredible power. David felt a renewed sense of purpose, to appreciate such acts, to respond with kindness when possible, and to ensure that he never became so absorbed in wealth and status that he lost sight of the human connections that truly mattered. Driving through the quiet streets, David continued to reflect on the significance of what had happened. He thought about the profound simplicity of Emily's note and how it had reminded him of the beauty of recognition. Sometimes, he realized, acknowledgement and appreciation were the most valuable gifts one could give, far more meaningful than anything money could buy. He considered the ways he could bring this lesson into his own world, how he could notice the efforts of those around him, express gratitude, and create moments of genuine connection, even in small ways. It was a lesson in humility and humanity, one that he knew would influence him long after the night was over. When he returned home, the luxurious surroundings of his mansion felt different somehow. They no longer represented the ultimate goal or the measure of success. Instead, they reminded him of the contrast between his usual life and the simple, heartfelt interactions he had just experienced. He felt grateful for the reminder that happiness and fulfillment could be found in ordinary moments, in genuine human connections, and in the small acts of thoughtfulness that often went unnoticed. The evening had given him clarity, a chance to step outside his world, and an experience that would remain etched in his memory. David realized that the diner visit and the note had changed something inside him. He felt motivated to carry the humility, awareness, and gratitude he experienced into his daily life. The memory of Emily's kindness and sincerity would serve as a guide, encouraging him to notice the people around him, appreciate their efforts, and respond with genuine warmth. He understood that life's richness was not in material wealth, but in meaningful relationships, small gestures, and the ability to be fully present with others. That night, he learned a lesson that no business deal, luxury purchase, or status symbol could ever teach the power of gratitude and human connection. As he finally settled into the quiet of his home, David reflected one last time on the evening. The diner, the meal, and the note had combined to create an unforgettable experience, one that had left him deeply moved and introspective. It reminded him that true happiness often resides in small, unexpected moments, and that genuine connection is the most valuable gift one can receive or give. For David, the night was not just a simple dinner, it was a profound awakening, a reminder of life's deeper meaning, and a catalyst for change in the way he perceived and interacted with the world. After that night at the diner, David Marshall found himself seeing the world in a new light. The experience, simple as it seemed, stayed with him long after he had left. The note from Emily, the humble waitress who had unknowingly touched his heart, kept replaying in his mind. Those few words had reminded him of something he had forgotten in the pursuit of wealth and success: the importance of human connection, gratitude, and small acts of kindness. For someone who had always measured success by numbers, deals, and social influence, this was a revelation, a quiet, powerful lesson that money could never teach. In the days following the diner visit, David noticed himself paying more attention to the people around him. He observed the barista who remembered his favorite coffee order, the janitor who quietly kept his office clean, and even his own employees, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure his business ran smoothly. Where before he might have been indifferent or impatient, he now felt a growing desire to acknowledge their efforts. Emily's simple gesture had shown him that recognizing others' contributions, even in small ways, could create meaningful connections. It was a lesson in empathy that David had never realized he needed until it arrived unexpectedly in a handwritten note at a small-town diner. David also began reflecting on his own behavior and the way he interacted with others. For years, he had lived in a world where appearances, influence, and achievement mattered more than sincerity or emotional connection. Relationships often felt transactional, and conversations were frequently about networking or status. But after his encounter with Emily, he started to question the value of all of that. He wondered how many opportunities he had missed to truly connect with people because he was too focused on business or image. The realization left him both humbled and inspired to change. He wanted to cultivate a life where genuine human interactions mattered just as much, if not more, than material success. One morning, David decided to implement small changes in his daily life. He began expressing gratitude more openly, starting with his employees. Simple gestures like personally thanking a staff member for their hard work, writing a note of appreciation, or taking the time to ask someone how they were became regular parts of his routine. To him, it wasn't about recognition or making a show. It was about genuinely valuing the effort and presence of others. He found that these small acts not only uplifted those around him, but also enriched his own life, giving him a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced before. The impact was immediate: smiles, sincere thanks, and moments of connection reminded him of the diner and the quiet power of Emily's note. David also started thinking more deeply about the concept of generosity. For much of his life, he had equated generosity with financial contributions, large donations, or expensive gifts. But now he realized that generosity could also be expressed in ways that cost nothing but time, attention, and thoughtfulness. A kind word, a note, or a simple smile could leave a lasting impression on someone, sometimes more profound than a lavish gift. He recalled Emily's handwritten note and how its simplicity had moved him more than almost any gesture he had experienced in his wealthy life. That moment had taught him that giving could be meaningful without being extravagant, and that mindfulness and sincerity were powerful tools in themselves. The memory of that evening continued to influence David's personal relationships as well. He became more present with friends and family, listening carefully, acknowledging their struggles, and celebrating their successes without distraction. He realized that genuine attention and care were far more valuable than the material comforts he could provide. Conversations became more authentic, laughter more shared, and the sense of connection deeper. For someone who had once measured life in achievements and wealth, this was a profound shift. The diner in Emily's note had reminded him that the richness of life came not from possessions, but from meaningful relationships and human understanding. David also carried the lesson into his business. He looked for ways to cultivate kindness, recognition, and empathy within his company. He started initiatives that went beyond financial incentives, emphasizing respect, acknowledgement, and support for employees at all levels. Simple ideas like handwritten notes of thanks, surprise recognition for effort, and opportunities to celebrate small victories became part of the company culture. It wasn't just about boosting morale. It was about creating a workplace where people felt genuinely seen and valued. The impact was noticeable. Productivity improved, satisfaction increased, and a sense of loyalty and trust developed among the staff. David realized that empathy and gratitude, lessons he had learned from a single diner visit, could transform not just his personal life, but the lives of those around him. Despite all these changes, David never revealed his visit to the diner or the identity of Emily. Part of the beauty of the experience lay in its anonymity, the fact that the lesson had come unexpectedly and that he had been moved by someone who didn't know his true identity. He cherished that purity. He sometimes thought about returning to the diner, but he realized that the memory itself was powerful enough. The story wasn't about meeting a famous person. It was about the impact of a simple gesture, a reminder that human connection and kindness often mattered more than fame, recognition, or wealth. Emily's note had taught him that genuine acknowledgement could touch even the richest hearts. Over time, David noticed a subtle but profound change in himself. He felt calmer, more grounded, and more appreciative of life's ordinary moments. Walking through the city, he observed people with curiosity and warmth, noticing small acts of kindness he might have overlooked before, a stranger holding a door open, someone helping carry groceries, or a parent comforting a child. These moments, once ordinary to him, now felt remarkable, filled with humanity and significance. He understood that the diner had opened his eyes to the beauty in everyday life, teaching him to slow down, pay attention, and value the small but meaningful interactions that often go unnoticed. David also reflected on the personal growth he experienced. The night at the diner had taught him humility. He realized that no amount of wealth could replace genuine human emotion, and that real value lay in empathy, connection, and thoughtfulness. It was a lesson in understanding the perspectives and experiences of others, and it inspired him to live in a way that was more considerate and compassionate. He began to recognize the ripple effect of his actions, how even minor gestures of kindness could create waves of positivity that touched multiple lives. Emily's simple note had set in motion a chain of awareness and gratitude that extended far beyond that single evening. As weeks and months passed, David continued to carry the lesson with him. He made it a personal mission to seek moments of connection, appreciate ordinary kindnesses, and express gratitude wherever he could. Every encounter became an opportunity to make someone feel valued, just as he had felt in the diner. He realized that the world, even in its complexity and challenges, was full of opportunities to practice empathy, and he felt inspired to act on them. His life, once defined by ambition and success, was now balanced with awareness, human connection, and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered in the end. David knew that the diner experience and Emily's note had changed him forever. What had begun as a simple visit to experience ordinary life had transformed into a lifelong lesson. It wasn't about fame, wealth, or recognition. It was about noticing others, valuing small acts of kindness, and embracing the humanity in everyday interactions. The memory of that night remained vivid, a constant reminder that real wealth came not from possessions, but from love, empathy, and connection. For David, the simple act of a handwritten note had unlocked a new perspective, one that he carried in his heart and shared through his actions every day, quietly spreading the impact of that extraordinary ordinary evening.